We are truly witnessing the total destruction of the First Amendment in real time, and it is horrifying because I feel so hopeless because I'm not sure what to do about it, aside from just continuing to exercise my own free speech until they take that away from me. And the firing of Jimmy Kimmel was barely the tip of the iceberg, but it's already having the chilling effect on free speech that we all expected it to have. For example, The View, which also falls under the umbrella of Disney, by the way, they were conspicuously silent about Jimmy Kimmel's firing, which is something that you would expect them to react to until you remember that they were on thin ice with Disney because their CEO told them to tone down the negative coverage of Donald Trump. So perhaps if they reacted to this and were honest, they might end up offending dear leader Donald Trump, which would lead to their subsequent firing. So we're in this environment now where almost all of media has fallen under the control of the state in some way, shape, or form, meaning that we no longer have a free press in the United States of America. Now, part of the problem is coercion from the federal government, but another problem is rapid media consolidation where Trump-friendly billionaires are buying up as many outlets as they possibly can in order to turn them into Fox News-like outlets. The main culprit is Larry Ellison, and as the New York Times reports, Larry Ellison is already a major stakeholder in CBS and Paramount. Now, CNN, HBO, and a major share of TikTok are in his sights. If all goes as anticipated, this tech billionaire, already one of the richest men in the world and a founder of Oracle, is poised at 81 to become one of the most powerful media and entertainment moguls America has ever seen. And like most billionaires, he is a Donald Trump dick rider because Donald Trump is really good for individuals like him. Cuts taxes, deregulates, so the rich love Donald Trump. Now, if you're curious as to what CNN or HBO could look like under his control, all you have to do is look at what he's done to CBS. He appointed a conservative ombudsman to field criticism of the station's coverage. Very, very Orwellian. And on top of that, he put his son, David Ellison, in control of CBS. And they're currently in talks to purchase the Free Press by Barry Weiss for around $100 to $200 million. And they may possibly give her a role as CEO or co-president of the network as part of the deal, which would allow her to shape its coverage. And for those unaware, Barry Weiss is a right-wing propagandist who goes above and beyond to whitewash Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people. And I didn't know about this until I heard Kyle Kulinski point this out. But the Free Press is not worth that much money, obviously. Like, I didn't think that it was. But when you look at their YouTube channel, for example, we have nearly double the subscribers that the Free Press has. And most of their videos don't pass 100,000 views. Some of them don't even pass 10,000 views, even though they've been up for 10 hours. And as somebody who does this full time, I can tell you that those analytics would not be sustainable. Certainly not worth $100 to $200 million, mind you. Maybe like you could survive and support yourself with those kind of views if you were doing it alone, but you can't have a whole media company with that kind of revenue, that kind of views, because it just doesn't yield the revenue that allows you to fucking pay the bills. Having said that, though, I'm sure that she's being propped up by right-wing donors, so money isn't necessarily the issue that it would be for someone like me who's independent, but it's by no means successful by any measure, and it's not worth that much money. But see, it's not about the talent or success, it's about the narrative. It's why Elon Musk overpaid for Twitter, because if you can seize control of the narrative, you seize control of our collective consciousness, which is the ultimate power that, of course, also nets you wealth. And Barry Weiss pushes a narrative that is beneficial to the ruling class, which is why they're elevating her. But we've only touched on media consolidation up until this point. I don't think that people grasp the other element and the scope of what Axios is calling media's MAGA makeover, where networks are rushing to rebrand themselves as more right-wing friendly in an attempt to curry favor with Donald Trump. Mark Zuckerberg, for example, of Meta, gave Donald Trump allies jobs at Meta. He eliminated fact-checking and he allowed hate speech on the platform again. The Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos announced that their opinion page would promote more conservative-leaning opinions. He also killed the paper's endorsement of Kamala back in November and struck a $40 million documentary deal with Melania Trump, obviously, to impress Donald Trump. They also just fired Karen Attiah, the last full-time black opinion columnist, because she dared to quote Charlie Kirk. Also, the owner of the LA Times, Patrick Soon-Shiong, also killed the endorsement of Harris by his editorial board and promised to balance it out with more conservative voices. On top of that, there's Univision, whose new owner buddied up with Donald Trump. There's the Baltimore Sun, which shifted to the right after it was sold to a Sinclair executive, which is a conservative company buying up local media around the country, which will be airing a Charlie Kirk tribute in place of Jimmy Kimmel's show on ABC, by the way. And on top of that, there's MSNBC that is splitting from NBC News and will soon be rebranded as MS Now. We have no idea currently what ideological slant they're going to take, but I wouldn't be surprised if they followed the pro-Trump industry trend, especially given their recent behavior, which we'll get to in a moment. But let's not forget that Elon Musk in 2022 bought Twitter, and that was significant. We didn't know how significant it was at the time, but he turned that platform into a haven for bots and Nazis, and that platform dramatically reshaped public discourse in the United States. Not to mention Congress defunded PBS and NPR. On top of that, news outlets have fired reporters like Terry Moran for criticizing a Trump official, Stephen Miller. And back to MSNBC, they fired Matthew Dowd for tepidly criticizing Charlie Kirk's rhetoric. Earlier this year, Joy Reid was also fired from MSNBC, seemingly over her Gaza coverage. And last year, they canceled Mehdi Hasan's show, presumably because of his Gaza coverage too. And even formerly progressive independent media outlets have capitulated in some ways to Donald Trump, such as Anna Kasparian of TYT and to a lesser extent Cenk Uygur. Whether or not that's a genuine ideological change or pressure that they feel to acquiesce for business reasons, I have no idea. But the extent to which left-leaning and neutral media outlets have collapsed in this country just cannot be overstated. And this change will prove to be utterly devastating, both in the short term and the long term. Independence is the hallmark of a free press, but all media is either now owned by a Trump ally or being targeted by Trump or the regime. And I don't know how the country survives this, because you can't live in a open, pluralistic society when you don't have a free press. You can't have democracy without a free, independent press. But, we're just talking about media consolidation and right-wing rebrands, but let's also talk about coercion. Remember, Donald Trump filed lawsuits against the Wall Street Journal, the Des Moines Register, ABC News, CBS, the New York Times, and so many companies are capitulating either because it's too costly to fight these winnable lawsuits in court, or because they think that it's better to capitulate to our autocratic president who may use the power of the state to bring them to heel, which would be far worse than a costly lawsuit. So, think about it. Within 9 months, Trump has conquered the free press. And that's like one avenue of his authoritarianism. But just with regard to the First Amendment, he has conquered the free press. So many presidents before him haven't been able to do that, but he did it like that. And this is part of Project 2025, so it's not like this wasn't planned. Nonetheless, it happened very quickly. And the next target is likely going to be social media companies. And I say that because the CEOs of Discord, Reddit, Twitch, and Steam have all been invited by James Comer to testify before the House Oversight Committee about online radicalization, specifically because of Charlie Kirk's murder, and whether or not these platforms had anything to do with that. Now, this is a very bizarre and ominous move to me, because how do you not invite Elon Musk to also testify about online radicalization? This man is the richest man in the world, and he was radicalized by his own platform. No questions there. How do you not invite the CEO of Rumble to testify, who hosts hate speech proudly so, or the CEO of Kick, who allows the worst kinds of content to go unfettered to the point where people are dying because of the things that's happening there? See, this just feels so ominous to me, because they're targeting the CEOs of platforms that seemingly have larger leftist communities. Now, this is conjecture, admittedly, but my fear is that maybe they asked Twitch's CEO about Hassan Piker's extremist speech. Perhaps they question executives at Steam, which sells video games, by the way, why they haven't sufficiently cracked down on adult video games, or video games that promote extremist progressive values or portray U.S. history accurately. Maybe I'm just being overly paranoid, but I am hypersensitive about these platforms, since we're starting to see the beginning of a major social media crackdown, more generally speaking, and I can't help but worry about whether or not this is part of the effort to send a message to those companies, to tell them, hey, if you don't get this extremist speech under control, you're gonna face our fucking wrath. We can do this the hard way, or the easy way. That's what FCC Chair Brendan Carr told ABC. So, it's not absurd to think that this is what's coming, especially seeing how age verification is becoming more common across the country. And, there's this hyper-regulation already starting to crush pro-Palestinian speech on TikTok. And when I say that it's starting to crush pro-Palestinian speech on TikTok, I don't people understand how large the scale of this effort is and who is in control of that moderation. Dropsite News reports TikTok is reportedly escalating a sweeping crackdown on pro-Palestine creators, deleting videos, scrubbing comments, and burying posts about Gaza. In July, it hired Erica Mindell, a former IDF instructor who says her Zionism was shaped during Operation Protective Edge, to run hate speech policy with help from ADL lobbying. A couple weeks later, on September 13th, TikTok introduced an overhaul of its community guidelines, banning users from calling the IDF terrorists and rolling out automated moderation that retroactively wipes posts. Users report Free Palestine comments are disappearing in real time, and Israeli war crimes videos are being taken down. Oracle, that's from Larry Ellison, by the way, Silver Lake, and Andreessen Horowitz are set to buy 80% of TikTok's U.S. operation, a move likely to make the platform even more aggressive in censoring pro-Palestinian content. Now, this crackdown comes in the aftermath of news about Cyberwell, an Israeli corporation taking over content moderation, not just for TikTok, but Twitter and Meta as well. And to be clear, their definition of anti-Semitism is just any and all criticism of Israel. But as the Attorney General said, hate speech isn't free speech, and hate speech is what they say hate speech is. It doesn't mean like inciting hatred towards a marginalized group like it used to mean. It means like if you're mean to Donald Trump, that is hate speech, I guess. Even though like hate speech is allowed under the First Amendment. This has been adjudicated by the Supreme Court and extensively, but, that's effectively the law since the administration is unilaterally dictating what is and isn't acceptable. The law is essentially what Trump says it is. That's de facto how it is right now. And on that note, Mahmoud Khalil was detained for more than 100 days simply for exercising his First Amendment rights. He led peaceful anti-genocide protests at Columbia University, and he was punished for it. He missed the birth of his child because he was detained because he dared to say genocide is bad, and a judge just ruled that he must be deported to Syria or Algeria, to which he responded, "It is no surprise that the Trump administration continues to retaliate against me for my exercise of free speech. Their latest attempt, through a kangaroo immigration court, exposes their true colors once again. When their first effort to deport me was set to fail, they resorted to fabricating baseless and ridiculous allegations in a bid to silence me for speaking out and standing firmly with Palestine, demanding an end to the ongoing genocide. Such fascist tactics will never deter me from continuing to advocate for my people's liberation." I've got to say, the way that this man has been treated by our government is truly unforgivable, and I hope that there's a day where there's going to be justice for him and he gets millions of dollars after suing the shit out of them for violating his civil liberties. But with that being said, the way that he is responding with courage and defiance, that is the energy that we all have to have, because if a permanent resident can be deported simply for exercising political speech that the government does not want, that is another indication that the First Amendment may no longer be in effect at all. It's very clearly not protecting our civil liberty in the way that it once did. But I mean, it's seemingly getting worse, which is all the more reason why we have to follow Mahmoud Khalil's lead, because if we just capitulate or bow down to power in the face of scrutiny or whatever, it's just going to continue to get worse. You never obey in advance, and you always resist tyranny, and he's leading the charge. But, as bad as things are, not all hope is lost, because fighting back, it does still matter to a limited extent. Earlier this week, I talked about a new bill that would give Marco Rubio the authority to revoke passports of citizens who simply commit thought crimes or express speech that the regime doesn't like. But that bill was actually withdrawn following severe backlash from civil liberty groups. So that's why you never give up hope. Using the diminishing freedom that we still do have to speak out does still make a difference. But I'm afraid that it'll only get us small victories going forward, because all of the media consolidation and capitulation that we're seeing simply cannot be undone. And that's one thing that chills me to the bone. Going forward, we will have more conservative media in this country than ever before. And we saw the effect of Fox News on an entire generation, but now amplify that. Make most stations Fox News or right-wing adjacent. And then what does that mean for society? How bad does it get? How brainwashed do the peasants become? It's a permanent change. You can't really undo that. And now that Republicans know how easily media companies fold, they're going to never, ever unlearn that fact. There's no way to use the Men in Black pen to make them forget about the fact that these companies will fold like that. Going forward, every president, assuming that Donald Trump ever leaves office, is going to use the power of the state to coerce media companies to give them the coverage that they want, because Trump is doing this and getting away with it. That independence can never be returned once it's lost, especially with right-wing billionaires at the helms of these companies dictating what they can and can't say. And democracy simply cannot exist without a free and independent press. So going forward, the institution of media is not going to be the unofficial fourth branch of government in order to hold it accountable, because like the agencies that are also supposed to be independent, the media has also been absorbed by an executive branch that has become all-powerful. That is not how this country is supposed to be, but how it's supposed to be and how it is are two very different things right now, because we have a power-hungry dictator who thinks that he should have absolute control and no pushback whatsoever. Media companies, at this point, for all intents and purposes, are under state control, and that is a fact that is blowing my fucking mind right now, right? They're under state control in some way, shape, or form, either directly, indirectly, or they're facing threat through government coercion. And it's only a matter of time until the remaining voices online are silenced next. So I think that leftist content creators, not to put this into the universe because I don't want to give them any ideas, but I think they're already, swirling in their heads. Leftist content creators need to come up with a contingency plan of sorts, because this platform may not be long for this world either. That doesn't mean that I think YouTube is going to go away anytime soon, but it could mean that Google's president, who attended Trump's inauguration, makes a call to the CEO of YouTube, whose parent company is Google, and tells him to get the criticism and extremism under control. Maybe they'll make some changes here and there to the terms of service or tweak the algorithm to either bury criticism of Trump or promote pro-Trump content. Either way, that can happen overnight. It's just a matter of whether or not Trump discovers that there is an abundance of criticism on this platform. They're finding out about Twitch. So after they clean up the extremism on Twitch, how long until they set their sights on YouTube more directly? And that dystopian reality might be just around the corner. So cherish the way that things are now, because as bad as they are, it could all be so much worse in the near future.